Hey everybody, it's the Herb Guy. Welcome back to Where Science Meets Nature, a channel where we discuss the medicinal value of plants and other natural substances found in nature all around us, with a little bit of science thrown in because we can. Today I'd like to talk about what do all those terms mean when you go into an herb store and you talk to an herbalist. Now, oftentimes they'll talk about things like infusions or decoctions or tinctures or extracts, and they give you this long litany of terms that you may not necessarily know the name of. Now, they're not new terms, right? Most of those terms are actually very old, and this is old stuff that's kind of brought into the mainstream today. But us as a society hasn't necessarily kept with those terms. Infusion, you might understand, with regards to an infusion of cash in your bank account, that's pretty easy to get. But when it comes to some of the other terms, they don't necessarily make sense. And so we're going to start with some of the basic stuff. And the basic terms we're going to talk about is the different uses for the different plants, how you use them, what each of those little words means, and how it all applies to herbal medicine. So I think what we'll do is we'll start with the term infusion, and you've probably seen, you know, most often when it comes to herbs, infusion is a tea. Most people think that tea is an infusion, and it is. I mean, technically that defines it, but um, the actual definition for it is a drink, remedy, or extract prepared by soaking the leaves of a plant or herb in liquid, such as a strong rosemary infusion. Now, liquid can mean anything. It could be water, it could be alcohol, it could be oil, um, vinegar, whatever you happen to soak your particular herb in order to get the infused properties out of it. Now, for the most part, when it comes to like teas, infusions are okay, but the downside to them is you have to heat up the herb in order to get the properties. Um, Sorry about that. If you have to heat up the herb, sometimes some of those compounds are very fragile, and you get the herb up to a certain temperature, boiling or higher, and some of those compounds will actually break down and not be quite as effective. So, though you'll get the tea out of it, you'll get the infused part out of it, you won't necessarily get all the properties out of it, um, if that makes any sense. Okay, so when it comes to teas, there's several different methods or different parts of the herbs that are used in order to make your teas. Um, Sometimes you go with just the root. This is the whole root, sassafras. It you dry out the roots, and you could put those in water, and these will last, I don't know, 3 or 4 different uses to make your tea or your infused water, and you can use them over and over and over again, and then eventually you blend them all together, where you have all 4 of them in there in order to get your last. But you could probably get 3, 6, 9, 12, a dozen uses, plus another 3 or 4 on top of that when you combine them all together in order to get your sassafras, your root beer, or whatever you're making out of it. The whole root is okay, but there's not really a lot of surface area to extract the properties from, so they don't necessarily isn't necessarily the best way to have your tea. But if you want to have something that you can use over and over again, that's a good way to do it. One of the other ones is the leaf. Oftentimes you'll see leaf, and it's loose leaf teas. Um, these are okay for tea balls and whatnot. You don't want to try to use, say, powders in a tea ball, because all that stuff will come out, unless of course you like chunky tea. But um, the leaf, and then depending on the herb, it will be depending on what you get for it. Now, for lemongrass, you don't really necessarily need the roots, okay? But it's a very lemony tasting herb, and it's good. It's a good addition to other teas and blends. Then you have your cut and sifted, right? This is dandelion root, but it's cut and sifted, and as you can see, if you can, these are really small cut particles. Um, this will last, you have probably 15 or 20 half teaspoons. You want about a half a teaspoon per cup of water if you're making a tea out of it. And um, those can also be used multiple times. But if you use it the first time, save your half teaspoon, do another tea with a half a teaspoon, and then combine those two together to have 1 teaspoon to make your cup, and then that's pretty much the end of what you're going to have left in the root, property wise. Now, other ways that they can do herbal teas is where you do an herbal blend. For instance, this is a lemon ginger tea. This is our particular blend. It has lemongrass, ginger root, lemon balm, lemon peel, rose hips, cinnamon, and stevia. If you can see the ingredients there. Now, this will make, about 20 cups of tea. It's got that ginger and lemony kind of flavor to it. It's good for like coughs or if you have an upset stomach or digestive issues. Works really well. There's also seeds. So, like, for instance, here you have milk thistle seed. These are the whole seeds. Now, the downside to milk thistle, and this is kind of a poor example, but when it comes to milk thistle seed, this is extremely hard to get the properties out of. Now, this plant is wildly medicinal. Okay, this is hands down my favorite plant, and it's a liver booster. And the best way for you to get the properties out of it is with alcohol. You have to actually make an extract out of it, but we're going to talk about those later. You can take it this way, you'll still get some of the properties, it'll still boost your liver, though not necessarily the same way you were hoping that it would. Of course, you can grind them up and then put them in alcohol and make your own tincture out of them too. That is possible to do. You have berries, like for instance, these are goji berries, lychee berries. We have the whole berries that are kind of dried, like, kind of like dried fruit. They're pretty tasty. You can also extract these. You could put them in your blender and grind the heck out of them and put alcohol in them and blah, blah, blah. And to use that to do your smoothie or make your tincture or whatever. And then we have like hyssop. Now, hyssop is the whole herb. This has everything from the roots all the way to the plants, the flowers, all of it. This is the complete herb. And typically speaking, this is one of those types of herbs that you use the whole thing in order to get the best results. Of course, you can just use the leaf or you can just use the stems. All of it has the properties. It just seems to work better with that synergy that nature has to have all of these combined. Now, they can also have different ways. I'm getting there. Hold on. Different ways with the same material. So here's olive leaf whole. Okay, and the darn things keep puncturing the bags. It's hard to vacuum seal them because they're very hard. But it's the whole leaf that's been kind of curled up, but you have olive leaf powder, significantly smaller, much better to use, even though they both have an ounce, right? They're the same weight. This is going to be better to use if you're trying to make an extract or if you're trying to make a tea. These are okay for teas, and you certainly won't have to worry about having a chunky tea, and it'll work best in a strainer, but you'll have to use more of it, an equivalent in order to get your cup of tea out of that. So that's one of the other ways, or those are some of the many ways that you can use the herbs as far as considering it an infusion. Okay, so the next thing we're going to discuss is called a decoction. You'll hear herbalists term that, and now essentially that is a tea, but it's a tea with a specific goal in mind. It's a tea that you have to make uber strong. It's very concentrated. You boil it down, you boil it down, you boil it down to almost nothing. And an example or a product that's typically made by decoction would be an extract or a tincture that's made with glycerin, the VRG and the elderberry, EBG. Those are made with glycerin. Now, these are not fast to make. These take days to make if you want to make it right. And because if you get it too hot, you're going to lose the properties. And it just, so when you do your extract or trying to make your decoction, you boil it down to like a quarter. It's almost as if you're making some sort of syrup, and you are. It takes a lot of time, but once it's made, it's just as powerful as a tincture, though maybe not necessarily as healthy. It doesn't necessarily have all the same benefits as you would have if you just extracted it with alcohol. But it is a good alternative for people who can't have alcohol, for people who are concerned with their children having alcohol, that kind of stuff. Then you can just go to the glycerin tincture, and then that seems to work just as well. Now that's considered a decoction again, and that's where and it's typically where you use the roots, the heavier duty plants. You don't really want to try to do this with leaves and stuff. It doesn't work necessarily as well, but you can, of course. But yeah, that's where we're at with those, and decoctions are more common. You see a lot of glycerin-based decoctions, and if they're made right, it takes days. So. Next on the list is cold infused oils. Now, I put a link in the description below on how to make your own scented oils, naturally scented oils, and that's using the cold method. It does take quite a while. You have to be pretty patient to use the cold method. It's something you typically want to start, say, early spring when you have some sun and keep it in the window. I know a lot of people say don't let the sun hit it a lot because of the UV rays, but flowers get sun all the time and they're bombarded with UV rays, so it's not that big of a deal. But you use the sun as a means to kind of extract the the, the plant. Now, I in that video, I think I did roses, pretty sure. But we have our own product where we did the rosebud roasterizing body oil. We used all of our base oils plus the emu oil, and then it was basically a sun tea that was made with oils. It took like 30 days, and after it's all strained, it does really smell amazing. It's a good way to infuse your oils with a scent that you like naturally without having to add a bunch of chemicals and crap. Now, the best way to do it is if you put it in a blender or you put it in a food processor or whatever the heck you happen to have that can grind it up really fine. The finer it is, the more of the properties you'll get out of it, and the more of that smell or whatever you're trying to do to the oil will come in to that. Now, conversely, now, oh yeah, and in regards to cold infused oils, in some cases it could take up to 6 months. So, that's the kind of stuff you do if you're not in a hurry. Um, we have peony based oil we did the same thing with, and it sat for several months, and it is really uber strong as far as the aroma goes as the oils. And along those same lines, you have what's called a hot oil infusion, or hot infused oil, and it means pretty much exactly what you'd think. You heat it up like you would a tea. You have to make sure that it doesn't boil um, or fry, because if you get it too hot, you'll actually hear it crackling and you'll start frying your herbs. And sure, you might get some of the properties out, but again, it goes back to that. It's too hot. Now you've taken out a lot of the compounds that were beneficial. Now, some examples, and I didn't have any poured, but some examples of the oil based or hot oil based is everything you see that we have that is either a lotion or a salve or a stick. Now, the we also have the body oil, moisturizing body oil, um, chickweed first aid oil, I think it's called. But it's essentially the oil. This is all made out of the same oil. We just do different things with it to give ourselves different products. This is a first aid salve. It's kind of hard. You use it for cuts and scrapes and whatnot. Um, but then you have your lotion, okay, and it does all the same kind of stuff. It'll heal the skin, but it has like aloe vera juice and emu oil. I mean, they all have emu oil, but it has that, so that way it'll actually soak into your skin better. It'll do the same type of thing, right? It's still going to heal. It's a first aid salve, but it's the same product even, but it's used in a different way. And then you can make them into sticks, so you add more beeswax, or cocoa butter or whatever you happen to use to harden. Um, this is the same thing. You have the Boo Boo and Owie stick my wife thought up. It's kind of cute. And then you have the first aid stick. These are, you know, chapstick size. Bit bigger, about a half an ounce, a little bit, about half of one of these tins. But this one, this way it's hands free. It's a hardened salve. You can just rub it on, put the cap on, and you're good to go. And the way you do that is you hot infuse it. You cook the oils, sometimes 6 or 8 hours, and then you have to strain it really well and get all the debris out. And then you do your other stuff to either make it into a lotion or keep it as an oil. Um, you don't want to add your essential oils until after you're all done with the heating process, because you'll actually um, all the benefits you were hoping to keep in the product will go away. It'll just all kind of evaporate, and then you won't have it. So you got to be careful when you do that as well. Maybe I'll do a video on that at some point. Um, but yeah, that's where you're at with your oils. You got your cold infused oils and your hot infused oils, and they make similar products, but they're all fairly easy to do. All right, so the next thing in line is extracts, or also known as tinctures. Tinctures. Now, tinctures are a direct extract of the properties from the herb, but you're doing it the best way as far as removing the properties. Oftentimes it's either alcohol or glycerin are the two types of tinctures or extracts that you can get. But there's also, you have vinegar and fermentation. We'll talk about that later. Um, but those are the best ways to get the properties out, I have found. So, like I discussed before, you have milk thistle seed, right? The best way to get the properties, all of the properties out of those very hard seeds is to use alcohol. You can't cook them out. You'll break down the properties. It won't be as good, and they won't necessarily come out. They're not very water soluble, but they mix really well with alcohol. Now you also have, you can do like plain herbs where you have just a single herb. For instance, here we have sassafras root extract. Now this is not for flavoring. This is the medicinal part of the sassafras root extract. But the concept is the same. When it comes to extracts like this, you want to shake it before you use it, and make sure everything is nice and floating, and you have an equal amount every time you get a dose. You can also do blends, like Calm and Focused is a 3 herb blend. We have detox drops, 7 or 8 herbs, 6 or 7 herbs. And of course we have the glycerin based ones that we discussed already. These are still considered tinctures, even though they're glycerin based. Um, the blends are okay. I mean, blends are usually better, right? Because they attack a problem from multiple different angles versus just trying to do one thing. Some herbs have multiple different properties, but they only affect, say, a virus or, a cold or something in a specific way, and that's where you need the other ones to help. Um, and you can do the same thing with, you can do different things with the same. This is elderberry extract alcohol based, this one here. And then this is the elderberry extract glycerin based. They're both extracts. They're both have the same types of properties. Um, Only one was made with alcohol over the course of many weeks, and one was made with heat over the course of many days. So, that's another way that is used, or another term that the herbalists will use. Um, you can do this yourself. I mean, this stuff isn't really all that difficult, and a lot of times you just do your research. Some people prefer more alcohol. Some people prefer less. You can still get as concentrated a dose with less alcohol, so that way your little ones aren't necessarily getting 150 proof alcohol. Half a teaspoon of that's a lot. That's a lot, and especially if you're just a little tiny thing, you you, you got to use common sense. So sometimes you have to dilute it down, but it's only diluted with water in regards to the alcohol content. You're still making the tincture just as strong, so that way they're still getting the doses that they need. But that's what we have on tinctures. Now, one of the other things that they do with herbs and herbal medicine, and actually some pharmaceutical companies have come out and started to acknowledge the fact that there are herbs that are actual medicine, though what they've done is they've found a way to um, process the herb in such a way so where you have a little bit of the leaf and a little bit of the root or a little bit of the resin and a little bit of the bark or whatever in a uh, specific way in their recipe that they can patent that. They're not patenting the plant, they're just patenting the recipe. Um, Now, fermentation is really, really interesting because, from my perspective, it seems to be like one of the best ways you could possibly use herbs. Now, I did a video, and it's also linked in the description below, in regards to red clover flower. Now, red clover flower, you ferment it like you would a wine, right? And I did a video on how we did that. There's a couple of videos on it. Um, you would ferment it like you would a wine, and it releases all the properties. And in the studies, plural studies that they did in regards to that, they found that they used red clover extract by alcohol, like with the tinctures, right? And it didn't work as well. It kind of slowed down some osteoporosis in some older people, but it didn't stop some hot flashes. It was really good for menopausal symptoms, but it didn't really help with like the osteoporosis. It wasn't until later when they actually fermented it and turned it into like a red clover tincture, only it was naturally fermented versus being made with alcohol, and it literally stopped the progression of osteoporosis. It didn't slow it down. It didn't, maybe there was a little bit of help there. It literally stopped it. There was no bone loss throughout that course of the trial period, and that was by fermenting the herbs. So it tells me, from my perspective, that if you could ferment a lot of these things, you could and do the studies on them and find some studies on them, that they would probably have just as many properties, um, or more, as you would if you get them from an extract. But of course, that's just my opinion. We're just gonna go with that. And I don't have any examples to show you other than the video. You can go watch that video and on how we processed it, and it was interesting for sure. Um, yeah, that's where we're at with that one too. But on to the next. Okay, so the other thing that you can use when it comes to herbal terms is you have what's called a poultice. Now, a poultice was simply um, a medicine infused bandage that you put on in order to help heal wounds, burns, etc. Now, I do have some plants here. Obviously, you recognize the aloe. This one's the one from I did the video on the aloe plant. I don't think it's in the comment section, but description, I mean. But if you look through our videos, you'll see that I actually did a video on how I separated these, and as you can tell, they're doing pretty well. We even still have some new growth. They're doing well. They're happy. They still could use some forever homes though. So when you come by the store, you can get one. Now, so for a poultice, you have like lamb's ear, right? The leaves are big and fluffy. This is good for like helping to stop bleeding. It's good for inflammation. It's good for wound healing. Um, and it's big enough that if you hydrate it a little bit, so you put it say in a napkin, a hot napkin, and you let it sit in a paper towel for a few minutes, it'll rehydrate it and make it more flexible, so it's not gonna break apart. You can put that on a wound, and it'll help with the healing of the wound. This is some bone set leaf that I harvested, and it's very dry and brittle. You could do the same thing with it. It could be made. You could put it directly into the bandage for sprains and breaks. You could actually crush this up and put it in water and make a tea out of it. It's good for like fevers and other type of cold symptoms. Really, really one of those valuable herbs. And of course you have with aloe, I have a couple of leaves that fell off. Looks like they got pinched. I'll show you here. On the inside of aloe, you hear it kind of crackle. Probably not. But it's and it's a good healer. So you could take the aloe, like my burn here. It's mostly healed. There's a burn there. What is that one? You can just put it directly on there, just like that. And it helps to heal the wounds and stuff. But yeah, you can do that straight from your house. You can go into your backyard and harvest this stuff. A lot of this stuff is around. If you've been following me for any length of time, I've shown you a lot of these herbs and how to get them and how to process them, so you can actually find them and use them yourself. Okay, so I went ahead and saved the best for last. This is incense, or yeah, incense. These are plants that are typically resins. Sometimes, like with white sage, they'll use the leaves, and they have the same types of properties. Now, as far as like cleaning the air, and there's different ways to use the incense, right? Like these are just whole leaves. Oftentimes, you'll find sage sticks that'll be like shaped in the form of a big cigarette. You light the end and you wave it around. I'm not a huge fan of white sage. From my perspective, it smells like sweaty armpits. But hey, if it cleans the air, I guess I'd put up with that, right? It's worth it. You have cone incense that are typically sold in boxes. I don't know if this one's open. This one's not open. But the cone is, it's only about yay big. It's shaped like a cone. You light the end, you let it sit. It burns for 45 minutes an hour. And of course, you have sticks. Like here you have dragon's blood. But then you also have dragon's blood. These are in the form of sticks. Now, these oftentimes have saltpeter in them, which is what helps make them, potassium nitrate, I think it's called, which help make them to continue burning. And with things like smudge sticks, that it's just the leaf, it's just the plant. You can also do resins, like, this is frankincense and myrrh. This is a ground part, so you put that on, say, like a charcoal tablet and let it burn, and the smoke that comes, because smoke is lighter than air, it gets into all the cracks and crevices. This is really, really good and effective for cleaning your air out, especially if you have a cold in the house. You could burn some of the smoke, and boy, it'll put off a lot of smoke. But at the very least, you know that all the stuff is getting burned up in the air, and you don't have to worry about it affecting you negatively. Now, with the good thing about these is, these have the same types of properties, and I brought this one specifically. This is our dragon's blood extract, right? This was dragon's blood that was ground, that was put in alcohol solution for quite a while, blah, 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 broke it down, and it's the extract form. And this is really good for antimicrobial stuff. In other parts of the world, it's used for receding gum lines and for helping with teeth and enamel and whatnot. Tastes terrible. I'll be the first to tell you, it tastes terrible. Most herbs do, but they are very helpful, obviously, or otherwise, we wouldn't be doing this kind of stuff. And it's really the best way to go about healing yourself, because there's a synergy in nature. I keep saying that, and if you break up that synergy, it's going to break up your body, and that's why you have all the side effects from pharmaceuticals. But yeah, that's where I'm at with that. Okay, so that's what I have for right now. And I know this is a very lengthy video and it was somewhat disorganized. I did try to get as much information in here as I could and give you examples to show you what all this stuff means and what you can use it all for. Not everything is plant material, right? You have capsules. Okay, those are plant material. You know, this is a blend of capsules. You know, single herb. The thing about capsules, you got to be careful what you buy. Um, and the reason why is, like, if you go to Walmart and get them, or Puritan's Pride or whatever, you'll see that there's lubricant on the capsules, and you'll hear a lot of people, oh, the lubricant's just fine. Whatever, you know, that's on you. You do your own research on that. But when you're getting the bigger capsules, yeah, you pay less, right? Because they can make a bunch more than a smaller company can, because they don't have to clean their machines because they put the lubricant in there. The downside to that is you get cross contamination, you get fillers, you get the lubricant itself, you know, that's on every single capsule that you take. And if you take a handful of capsules, well, when they say, oh, well, it's safe in this tiny amount, well, when you have 15 capsules, well, you know, now you're taking 15 times the dose of what they recommend. So, you know, is that healthy? I don't know. You know, that's something you need to do your own research on. But you can do your own, you know, capsules. You can make those yourself. And it's not everything is all just herbs, right? So you have, like here, you have diatomaceous earth capsules. We sell diatomaceous earth powder. We also sell the capsules. This is the first herb, I call it. And this stuff is really, really powerful. Really, really, it's a good herb. And then, of course, you have your activated charcoal. We have capsules too, but, you know, you can just use the powder. And it's a very fine powder. It's good, you know, that way too. And it kind of was a plant at one point, you know. Typically speaking, it was either a coconut or a tree or whatever they happen to make it out of. So, you know, there's many, many different ways. And hopefully this video today helped you with some of the terms that you hear. If there's some terms that you've heard that you don't know what they are, feel free to list them in the comment section below, and I'll get back to you, and we'll work that out too. I'm going to be doing another video on why herbal medicine is so important, and I'm working on that actively, and hopefully, you know, it'll be done before the next week so I can get back on my weekly schedule of posting videos every week. If you liked the video, please give it a like and a share, and of course a share if you liked it and you want to share that with other people. And if you haven't subscribed yet, feel free to subscribe to our channel. Thanks for watching, everybody, and have a great day.